Okay, that'll be enough. Hey everyone, this video doesn't particularly jive with any show that's going on or anything that's going on. This is more a stray thought I've had. And I honestly want to understand the scope of the problem. So I'm sure people who are just coming across this video instead are going to go, "Hey, anti-Linux fanboy, go back to hell, you Windows or Mac fanboy." It's like, and I think anybody who's watching any of the content here knows I love Linux, but I'm not a fanboy. I don't put it up on a pedestal and go, "Oh, Linux is perfect," because it isn't. There ain't a platform out there that's perfect. One of the real problems with Linux is the lack of support. It's this is a problem on OS X too. It's less of a problem on OS X in recent years, thanks to a lot of Apple's marketing things. This is a problem Linux needs to address. And the first step to addressing a problem is accepting that it exists. The scenario is, I have a short list here, but I'm going to the community, and hopefully this video finds its way to other sources than the normal people who follow my videos. I'd like this list to get as complete as possible. The question here is as follows. What applications that you want is Linux missing? I think here we have a good group of people who like the idea of Linux, but aren't ready to switch yet until those things are there. So, list what they are. List what's like, I need this if I'm going to go have Linux be my primary operating system. I have to reboot into Windows for this, and if I have to do that, I don't want to. And then there's people who are using Linux, but it annoys the hell out of them that they have to run this stuff in emulation, or they have to run a virtual machine, or they have to dual boot into Windows, because they're like, my skin crawls when I do that. I love Linux, I love the UI, I love all the things I get with Linux. It annoys the hell out of me that I have to go do this to use this application because this company hates Linux. So, and these applications fall into three groups. And there might be more groups. If there's groups I've missed, point them out to me. Group 1, they run well in line or crossover, which means you can make them run in Linux, and you can make them run in Linux without having to dual boot or run a VirtualBox. But line and crossover are a form of virtualization, so they are not a native Linux application. In native Linux applications, in a well-designed, user-friendly distro, everything seamlessly integrates into the distro. You start a project in any application, your notification thing in your taskbar or dock or whatever you use is got tasks going on, and it lets you know when it's done, so you switch back to that app and start the next thing. You don't have to sit there and watch and keep checking on it and so on and so forth. You do when you're running things in line or crossover, because they're in a virtualization. They're not native things. You can't drag and drop them in. You can't do a lot of things that you could easily do with Linux apps because they're not a native Linux app. I've only got 2 applications on this list right now, and I'm sure there's more, but these are the ones I use, and one of them I don't use that often anymore. The first one I use all the time, Photoshop / the Creative Suite. The Adobe Creative Suite. It's currently on Creative Suite 5, but you may have 3 or 4. They work, for the most part, in line. They work a little better in crossover, but they're not a native Linux app. Adobe puts the resources into making a Mac app. Why don't they do it for Linux? There's this growing philosophy that Tux money is no good, or there isn't Tux money. Since some estimates put the Linux community equal to or greater than size to the Mac community by some unofficial counts, if there's enough money to justify developing for Mac, there's enough money to justify developing for Linux. It really is that simple. So if I've left applications out, if there's other applications than these 2 that that are Windows, primarily Windows only, they're Windows developed, but you're like, I'd love to see this in Linux. I want this application in Linux. Get in the comments down there or PM. I want to make this list as complete as possible so we know what's missing. We know what the companies are that need to be dogged on a little bit. The other set of applications, before we get into the last one here, is applications that we don't really want on Linux, but because of the way a product was designed or something else was designed, you need this piece of software to be able to get full use out of it. The only thing like that I can think of off the top of my head is iTunes. But I'm sure there's other things. I tend to stay away from things that are designed like that. So, other services that are like that it's, yeah, I prefer Rhythmbox or Armach or any of the other good open source players that do a whole mess of things that iTunes doesn't, but to update my iPhone, and I like the iPhone, like, we know I don't, but I'm talking you. It's like, you want to buy an iPhone, okay? Then you should still have the choice to run a Linux desktop. So that means iTunes needs to work on Linux. And iTunes is one of only like 3 applications I know that the company that makes the application has an active, ongoing effort to break compatibility with Winer crossover. Then alone make a native application. So that's not, but I'm sure there are other companies that have similar models or applications that are required to get full use out of either like a mixing board or other stuff they make that they don't make that application for Linux. It's like, and that's fine if that's their model, if they're creating a whole package experience, that's their prerogative. But a whole package experience needs to be platform neutral. So let's get a list of all these applications and companies that are doing this. Again, in the comments below are PM. It's like, let's get this list complete. Let's get it available so everybody knows who these companies are that are locking you in to Windows and OS. A lot of them are locking you solely into Windows. Some of them are saying, okay, because OS X isn't really a threat to Windows, we'll let you be locked into OS X too. But God forbid we have a little platform neutrality and we just create a good product that you can use on the computer you want to use. So let's get a complete list of that. The other category of stuff is a little more complex. They're not really applications, they're services. And there are services where these people very foolishly either implemented DRM. Personally, I think DRM is a load of bullshit, but we'll get into that in a minute. But if you're going to implement DRM and the people whose content you're publishing insist on DRM, that's fine. Implement DRM that's cross-platform compatible. If you have to develop an application to decrypt the DRM, fine, but that application needs to be cross-platform. One of the first services that makes this list, I'm sure this is an incomplete list. Again, if there's services I left off this list, put them in the comments below. Tell me who they are. First one, Audible. Audible has been saying for 3 years now, yeah, we're working on the Linux app. It does not take 3 years to develop a Linux app. Audible does not want to make a Linux app. They don't consider it necessary. So, Audible is one of the companies that we need to make a stink about. We need to make it very clear to them. We would love to give you money. That's not because I would. I'd give Audible money. They put everything in those .aa files, which you need their DRM determinant. Now, there are illegal ways, if you break the law to make this stuff work on Linux. But again, you shouldn't have to commit a crime to use something you own. And use a free or open source operating system. That should not be the choice you have to make. So Audible is a service that went out of that did not design their service properly. They did not design their service to be cross-platform. They need to, if they want to use that AA format with that type of DRM, then they need to make a native Linux version of that player, or a plugin that will do it for Armach and Rhythmbox. It's like that either way would solve the problem. Netflix. Netflix specifically isn't doing this, but Netflix is using Silverlight. So Microsoft is doing this in the way the Silverlight DRM has been implemented. But as a result, without breaking the law, there is no way to play a Silverlight stream, and hence so a Netflix stream, on a Linux box. I'm not going to tell you how to break that law. It's like if you know what I'm talking about in the law, it's being broke, you already know how to do it. I'm not going to get up here and advocate breaking the law. I'm advocating change for platform neutrality. So it's like those are the two services. There's a third one, OnLive. I have very mixed feelings about whether OnLive's even worth it, but OnLive is giving the same standard spiel that all these, and of course Steam also falls in this category, even though it's really an app, because Steam is also a marketplace like iTunes is. So it should be platform neutral too. The parting line from all of these companies, when Linux users go to them and go, how come my money's no good here? Is, well, we acknowledge that there is a customer base here and we're working on it. It's kind of a don't ask, don't tell, don't respond, don't have a point of view whatsoever mentality with all of these companies. It's pretty much the same point of view large corporations had regard to blogs about 5 years ago. About 5 years ago, the official company policy at every major corporation, when it came to a blog, when somebody got up, stood up, and said, man, this thing sucks, it's on, they sold me a lemon, it's on, yada yada and so forth, was, well, you know, they can go do that over there, but that doesn't really matter. Because that's unimportant. You know, it doesn't matter. It's on. If they really wanted to communicate with us, they'd come to our site and communicate to us on our terms and our way. Well, they started doing hate blogs because you didn't give a shit about them when they came to your customer service, came to your site, came to you on your terms. So they went somewhere where their complaints were actually being acknowledged. And then something miraculous happened. Complaints turned into bad PR. Journalists started inquiring about, wow, this company's stock started to fall, yada yada and so forth. There isn't a major company in the world now that doesn't keep its eye on the blogs. They understand that these people can destroy their company overnight. Many of them actively have blogs. Many of them respond to blog complaints and rip-off report complaints and so on and so forth immediately. It looks like these companies need to learn this lesson again in a different way. And I know they haven't learned this lesson because what the overall plan here is, which I'm not going to disclose at this point until it's implemented, but it's about getting stuff done, they have done nothing to protect themselves from it. And honestly, each one of these companies could have protected themselves for under $150 a year. So, yeah, they obviously, the official stance of all of these companies is, who gives a shit about Linux? There's no Linux users. Linux users don't pay for software. They don't have any money. Well, my honest mentality is this. As I've said, using Linux has saved me thousands of dollars. The way I look at it, I have thousands of dollars to spend I wouldn't normally if I was on the Windows platform or the OS X platform. Which means if your software is reasonably priced for what it does and it solves a problem that open source software doesn't solve, either because it can't for legal reasons or vice versa, I'm still money up, even buying your software, so I'll probably buy it. It just has to be good software, not crapware. So, in the comments, other stuff, list the software. Linux episode will be up tomorrow, but I'm going to give this video a day to try and get proper attention from other people. Forward this video to other people who you think can contribute to the conversation. Peace out, all.